Unaware she was the secret CEO of his company, he divorced her for his mistress. But everything began to crumble the moment Amelia Carter walked into the boardroom he thought he owned. Dylan Reeves spent years believing he was the rising star of Titancore, the man destined to command the company, and the wife he thought he controlled. Amelia, quiet and overlooked, played the role of the ordinary wife so flawlessly that no one suspected she held the true power, the hidden identity, the billionaire legacy her husband desperately craved. She cooked, she taught at the elementary school, she smiled at company dinners. But beneath that soft smile lived a woman with a secret tied directly to the very company Dylan worshipped. He divorced her for Sabrina, his mistress, his fantasy, his shortcut to status, convinced that Amelia was small, replaceable, irrelevant. But he had no idea he had just walked away from the woman who secretly owned everything he had ever worked for. Now the children whisper questions he can't answer. The board murmurs about movements he can't explain. The parents on both sides question the choices no one saw coming. And as the truth slowly coils toward him, one question hangs in the air. What happens when the man who betrayed her walks into a board meeting and discovers the quiet wife he abandoned is the billionaire CEO he never knew existed? And even more unsettling, what revenge has she prepared for him, and why does every path lead back to the hidden identity he never thought to ask about? Amelia Carter had mastered the art of blending into the background. In the quiet suburb of Westbridge, where manicured lawns and polished cars displayed their owners' ambitions, she walked with soft steps and spoke with intentional gentleness. The neighbors knew her as the sweet school teacher married to that rising executive at Titancore Holdings. A harmless, humble woman, a doting mother, someone who lived a simple life by choice or limitation. No one could quite tell. Dylan Reeves had never questioned that simplicity. To him, Amelia was predictable. She prepared breakfast every morning, packed the kids' lunches, taught at the local elementary school, and returned home before he did. She was supportive, mild, non-threatening. She never asked about his work at Titancore, never challenged his long nights or sudden business trips. Dylan saw it as complacency. What he never realized was that Amelia didn't challenge him because she was too busy watching what he couldn't see. Amelia's father, Michael Carter, had taught her that true power sat quietly. A storm doesn't announce itself, he used to say. It simply forms. When he died 4 years earlier, Amelia inherited what most people would never imagine: 51% of Titancore Holdings, protected by a legally impenetrable silent trust. She became the majority owner and shadow co-founder, a secret that only the board and her father's closest advisors knew. She was to remain anonymous until the board voted otherwise. So she watched, observed, learned, and from the shadows she saw every ambition that bloomed inside Titancore, including the one growing inside her husband. Dylan had charm, ambition, and a talent for convincing powerful men that he belonged among them. He dressed in sleek suits, drove a glossy black sedan, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed he was destined for greatness. To him, Titancore was his ladder to glory, and Amelia was simply background decor. But cracks had begun to show. Dylan's ego had inflated with every promotion. He spoke more sharply at home. He rolled his eyes when Amelia mentioned school. He bragged about meetings with directors, about his inevitable rise, about the big moves he was making. Amelia listened, silent but not passive. Her father had once warned her, "The man you marry reveals his character most clearly when he thinks no one is watching." Dylan now walked around believing no one was watching, but Amelia saw everything, especially the late-night texts, the sudden new cologne, the secretive smiles. She wasn't naive. She was strategic. She didn't confront him, because confrontation gives the enemy notice. Instead, she waited, and in the waiting, her 2 children, Kayla, 9, tender and perceptive, and Toby, 11, quiet and introspective, clung to her more closely. They sensed something shifting in the air, something sharp and uneasy. Amelia knew a storm was forming, but what Dylan didn't know was that she was the storm. The first real fracture in Dylan's carefully curated world appeared on a rainy Thursday evening. One of those nights where the sky seemed to sense trouble before anyone else did. Amelia had stayed late at school, supervising a parent-teacher meeting. When she finally stepped out of the building, she noticed several of her students lingering under the dim streetlights, hungry, thin, pretending they weren't waiting for someone to notice them. She couldn't ignore them. She handed out the extra sandwiches she had packed for her own kids, kneeling to speak gently with each child. Her hair clung to her face, her cardigan soaked through, but her voice was patient and warm. She didn't realize a pair of headlights was slowly approaching. Dylan sat behind the wheel of his car, watching the scene through the windshield. But instead of admiration, irritation bloomed in his chest. Why is she out here looking like this? Why is she embarrassing me? He didn't honk. He didn't step out. He simply drove off without her. Amelia got home 30 minutes later, unaware that he had seen her, unaware that he had already twisted the narrative into something ugly. She walked into the kitchen, shivering slightly, only to find Dylan leaning against the counter, scrolling his phone, smiling in a way he never smiled at her anymore. She ignored the sting and reached for a towel, but before she could speak, his phone chimed. A video lit up the screen. Sabrina Hayes, glossy lips, sleek hair, unbuttoned blouse, whispered into the camera. "Miss me? When will you leave that boring wife for someone who understands ambition?" Dylan smirked. He forgot he wasn't alone. A tiny voice broke the silence. "Daddy, why are you smiling at another woman?" Dylan froze. Kayla stood at the doorway, her hair damp from bath time, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly. Behind her, Toby watched silently, his jaw tight, eyes filled with a new, frightening understanding. Amelia turned slowly, towel still in hand. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Their daughter's question carried more weight than any accusation. Dylan stammered, "Kayla, it's just, Daddy was... Look, go to bed." But Kayla didn't move. She asked again, voice trembling, "Why are you smiling at another woman when Mommy is right here?" Toby stepped forward, placing an arm around his sister, his gaze locked on his father, disappointment radiating from him like heat. Dylan snapped, "I said go to bed!" The children flinched. Amelia stepped in front of them, her voice soft but steady. "Kids, go upstairs. Mommy will tuck you in soon." They hesitated, then obeyed. But their footsteps up the stairs sounded like the closing of a door that might never reopen. When they were gone, Amelia looked at Dylan, really looked at him, and for the first time, something inside her went cold, but she still said nothing. Dylan mistook her silence for weakness. He had no idea that in that moment, his fate had already started unraveling. 2 weeks passed, each day heavier than the last. Dylan moved through the house like a man simmering with resentment. Resentment toward Amelia, toward the children, toward the life he once claimed he built, but now felt trapped inside. He stayed out late more often, returning home smelling of expensive restaurants and Sabrina's floral perfume. Amelia noticed every scent, every shift, every lie disguised as work. But she still waited, not out of ignorance, but out of calculation. Then came the night the mask finally shattered. It was nearly midnight. Amelia sat at the dining table grading essays, red pen in hand, her posture calm despite the storm brewing quietly behind her eyes. The children had long been asleep, though Toby had waited up in his room, pretending to read, listening for the sound of his father's return. Kayla had cried herself to sleep again, something that had become disturbingly routine. The front door opened. Dylan stepped in, loosened his tie, and without a greeting or glance tossed a stiff manila envelope onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and bumped into Amelia's papers. She didn't touch it yet. Her voice was steady. "What's this?" "The end," Dylan answered, leaning back with a smugness he didn't bother hiding. "Amelia, this marriage isn't working. You're not enough for the life I'm building. I'm done pretending." Her fingers tightened around the pen, but her face didn't change. "And Sabrina?" He didn't even flinch. "She understands ambition. She knows how to support a man on his way up. Something you were never capable of." Amelia inhaled slowly, the kind of breath that held back oceans. "You want to divorce me," she said quietly, "for your mistress." "Yes," he said simply. I'm marrying Sabrina. The room felt colder. Amelia finally opened the envelope. Divorce papers, already signed by him, dated, prepared long before tonight. She lifted her eyes, studying the man she once loved. The same man her children still cried over. The man her parents believed was a gift. And in that moment, she didn't feel heartbreak. She felt clarity. You've already made arrangements, she murmured. Of course I have, Dylan said, as if it were obvious. I've got a promotion coming, a big one. Deputy Managing Director. Sabrina will fit that life. You won't. Amelia said nothing. Her silence unsettled him. You don't get to keep the house, he added quickly, needing control. Or the car. I'll provide child support. But the kids are better off staying with me when I settle into my new place. Her head lifted sharply. The children are staying with me. Dylan scoffed. We'll see. What he didn't notice was the staircase. Halfway up, Toby stood silently, fists clenched, listening to every word. His world was splitting in two. Dylan walked away, humming, believing he had just won. Amelia looked down at the papers, then toward the stairs where she sensed her son standing quietly in the dark. Her heart broke for her children, but something else awakened inside her. Not rage, not grief, power, a cold, deliberate, patient power. And Dylan had just given her the perfect reason to use it. The morning after the divorce papers arrived was strangely quiet. Amelia moved through the house like she was carrying a fragile glass world in her arms. She cooked breakfast even though she hadn't slept. She packed the kids' lunches even though her hands trembled. She tied Kayla's shoelaces and smoothed Toby's collar because routine was the only shield her children had left. But the children were not fooled. Toby sat at the kitchen table, staring into his cereal as though trying to decode the meaning of last night's events. His eyes were red, but there were no tears. He had cried in silence after hearing his father's cruel words. He had always believed his father was busy, not selfish, distracted, not disloyal. But now he understood. Kayla, on the other hand, clung to Amelia's leg, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her pajama top. Mommy, is Daddy leaving us? Amelia knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's cheek. Daddy loves you. He's confused right now. It was the most child-gentle truth she could manage. But he was smiling at the lady on his phone, Kayla whispered, her voice cracking. Why didn't he smile at you? Amelia felt something inside her twist painfully. She wanted to wrap her daughter in a world where heartbreak didn't exist, but the real world had arrived too early. You don't need to worry about that, Amelia said softly. I'm here. Mommy's not going anywhere. Toby looked up suddenly. He said we'd live with him. His voice was tight, edged with anger he didn't know how to express yet. I'm not going anywhere with him. Amelia opened her mouth to answer, but the sound of a car engine rumbling outside drew all their attention. Dylan's new BMW. He hadn't even bothered to park discreetly. Kayla gasped. Toby stiffened. Dylan walked in without knocking, acting like nothing had happened, like he wasn't the man who had thrown his family into chaos. Kids, come on, I'm taking you to school today. Amelia stood. No, not today. Dylan raised an eyebrow. You don't get to dictate that. I'm still the father here. Toby stepped in front of his sister, shoulders squared. We're not going anywhere with you. Dylan blinked, taken aback. Toby, I don't know what your mother told. She didn't tell me anything, Toby snapped. I heard you. Silence fell. For the first time, Dylan's confident posture cracked. His eyes darted between Amelia and the children, confusion flickering. He wasn't used to being confronted, especially not by his own son. Kayla whispered, Daddy, you made Mommy cry. Dylan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Amelia placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. I'll take them today, she said firmly. You should go. Dylan hesitated, then scoffed and grabbed his keys. Fine, but this isn't over. As the door slammed behind him, Kayla burst into tears again. Toby walked straight upstairs, closing his door quietly. The kind of quiet that screams. Amelia exhaled shakily. Her heart hurt. Her children hurt. And somewhere beneath that pain, a plan began to form. One that would protect them, reveal the truth, and dismantle every illusion Dylan had wrapped himself in. The storm had started. and Amelia Carter would make sure it didn't end until the truth was undeniable. The next few days passed in a blur of tension. Dylan had moved out, taking only a few bags and far too much self-confidence with him. He stayed with Sabrina now, proudly posting filtered photos on social media. New beginnings, new love, new life. Amelia didn't respond. She didn't inquire. She simply continued living, each breath measured, each step quiet but intentional. On Monday morning, after dropping the children off at school, Amelia drove to the small cafe her father once frequented. It was the same cafe where he taught her chess, where he explained business strategies disguised as life lessons, where he whispered secrets she didn't yet understand. She sat at their usual table, the one by the window, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne. Her phone buzzed, a number she recognized but rarely saw. Richard Monroe, the acting CEO of Titan Corp and her father's most trusted advisor. She answered immediately. "Richard?" His voice was calm but weighted. "Amelia, it's time." Her heart paused. "Time for what?" "The board has voted," he said, "unanimously. They want you to step forward. They want the rightful owner to take her place." Amelia closed her eyes. The world seemed to tilt. "Why now?" "There's been activity," Richard replied. "Suspicious spending, unauthorized promotions. Someone's been moving aggressively inside the company. Someone with personal interests." Amelia didn't need his next words to know. "Dylan Reeves," Richard said. "Your husband." Amelia let out a slow, controlled breath. Richard continued. "He's pushing hard. He's grooming himself for deputy managing director and using internal resources to do it. Expensive dinners, corporate favors, gifts to certain managers. And now he's lobbying to replace me within the year." Of course he was. Dylan had always had a dangerous combination of charm and entitlement. Richard softened his tone. "Before your father passed, he made us promise that when the time came, we would secure the empire for you and for your children's future. That time is now." Amelia rested her hand on the table, steadying herself. "What happens next?" "You'll need to attend the executive board meeting this Friday," Richard said. "Your identity will be revealed to the entire company. It will be dramatic." Dramatic was an understatement. He hesitated before adding, "Dylan will be there too, along with Sabrina Hayes." A small, cold smile tugged at Amelia's lips. Of course they would be. Perfect. Richard cleared his throat, cautious. "Are you ready, Amelia? This will change everything." She thought of her children crying in their rooms, thought of Kayla asking why her father smiled at another woman, thought of Toby standing between her and the man who broke their home, thought of Dylan arrogantly believing she was beneath him. A slow resolve settled in her chest. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." But before she could end the call, Richard added one more thing, a twist she hadn't expected. "There's something else. Your father left a sealed letter in the vault with instructions that it be opened only when you stepped into your role as CEO. It's addressed to you." Amelia's breath caught. "A letter? From him? What does it say?" she whispered. "We haven't read it," Richard said. "Only you're allowed to." The call ended, leaving Amelia in stunned silence. A sealed letter from her father. A board meeting that would expose everything. A husband who had no idea the ground beneath him was about to collapse. The storm was no longer forming. It was here, and Amelia Carter was ready to rise. Friday approached with the weight of destiny. The board meeting invitation sat on Amelia's kitchen counter like a sealed prophecy. She hadn't told the children yet. They were still adjusting to the new rhythm of life without Dylan. But Kayla slept better now, tucked into Amelia's arms each night. Toby, though, retreated deeper into himself, carrying questions that he refused to voice. On Thursday afternoon, after dropping the kids at her mother's house, Amelia drove to Titan Corp's private headquarters, a glass fortress rising over the city like a monument to ambition. She had been there many times, but always through the back road, always unseen, always introduced as the beneficiary or Mr. Carter's daughter, never as the owner. Security escorted her to the executive vault, a heavily guarded chamber located beneath the building. Only 3 people had access: Richard Monroe, the CFO, and her. The air inside the vault was cold, still, and eerily silent. Boxes, files, and sealed metal drawers lined the room. Amelia's father had always treated the vault like a sacred place. She remembered being 9 years old, watching him place documents inside with reverence. Richard stepped beside her. "It's right here." He opened a drawer and took out a slim black envelope, her name written on it in her father's elegant handwriting. "Amelia. Open only when you're ready to lead." Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a single letter. She unfolded it slowly, bracing herself as if stepping onto a bridge between past and future. "My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, then the moment I always knew would come is finally here. You were not born to be silent. You were not born to shrink for a man who cannot see your light. Titan core is your birthright, but more importantly, power is your responsibility. Our legacy is not wealth, it is protection. There are people in this world who will try to take what is yours. Some will be obvious enemies. Others will smile at your table. Do not fear the storm, Amelia. You are the storm. And when the day comes that someone betrays you, and it will come, do not fight with anger. Fight with truth. Truth destroys pretenders faster than rage ever will. Stand tall. The world needs to see who you are. A tear slipped down Amelia's cheek, not from sadness, but from a surge of strength so powerful it left her breathless. Her father had always known. He had seen this long before she did. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. "You understand why we waited?" "Yes," she whispered, because she needed to walk into that boardroom not as a wife reclaiming dignity, but as a leader claiming destiny. Amelia tucked the letter back into the envelope and straightened her shoulders. As they walked back toward the elevator, Richard added, "There's something else you should know." She looked at him wary. "Dylan didn't just pursue a promotion," Richard said. "He submitted a proposal to restructure Titan Core, one that would give him decision-making power over employee terminations." Amelia stopped in her tracks. "Terminations? Of who?" Richard hesitated. "The first name on his list was yours." The world went still. Her own husband had planned to fire her, the real owner, without knowing who she was. Amelia exhaled, slow and deadly calm. "Good," she said. "Then tomorrow's meeting will be poetic." Thursday evening settled over Amelia's home, like a trembling heartbeat. The children were quieter than usual during dinner, each of them sensing something electric, something shifting in the air. Amelia spoke gently, keeping her voice warm, steady, present, but inside her mind a storm map unfolded, every piece of tomorrow's board meeting falling into place with surgical precision. After tucking Kayla into bed and kissing Toby's forehead, she lingered in the hallway, listening to their soft breaths. They were her world. Everything she was about to do, every truth she would unleash, was for them. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. When she opened it, her breath caught. A photo of Dylan and Sabrina, kissing, in his new apartment, her children's family portrait, one he had taken from the old house, thrown on the floor behind them. Amelia didn't flinch. Her heartbeat didn't even spike. She stared at the image as calmly as she might study weather patterns before a storm she already expected. Seconds later, another message arrived. "You should sign the papers, Amelia. Don't embarrass yourself tomorrow. Dylan." He knew nothing, absolutely nothing. A slow, icy smile curled on her lips. She typed nothing back. Instead, she placed her phone face down and walked to her bedroom closet. She reached for a garment bag she hadn't touched in years, the one her father bought her the week before he died. Inside it was a tailored charcoal suit with a sharp, sculpted silhouette and a silk blouse the color of steel. She ran her fingers along the fabric, remembering her father's words. A leader dresses not to impress, but to declare presence. Tomorrow she would declare everything. She laid the suit across the bed and moved to her vanity. A memory tugged at her. The last conversation she'd had with her father. "Amelia," he had said, "the world won't hand you power, but it will certainly bow when you claim it." She inhaled deeply. Then her phone buzzed again. This message was from her mother. "Dylan came by. He told us you're ruining the marriage. He said you pushed him away." Amelia's heart tightened. not in hurt, but in realization. Dylan wasn't just preparing for tomorrow, he was pre-spinning the narrative. Moments later, her father-in-law sent a message too. "We agree with Dylan. You should fight for your marriage." She closed her eyes. Her parents were loyal to a fault. Dylan's parents adored him. The world saw him as charismatic, respectable, ambitious. No one would believe Amelia if she spoke now. But tomorrow she wouldn't need to speak. The truth would speak for itself. A knock startled her from her thoughts. Toby stood in the doorway, eyes heavy but determined. "Mom?" he whispered. "Are you okay?" Amelia knelt beside him. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because I heard Dad yelling at Grandma earlier. He said you were lost." She cupped his face gently. "I'm not lost. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." He studied her, then nodded, trusting her in a way that deepened her resolve. "Can you stay with me tonight?" he whispered. "Of course." She lay beside him until he drifted into sleep, the rise and fall of his breathing syncing with her own rhythm of strength. When she finally slipped back into her room, she looked once more at the charcoal suit. Tomorrow she would walk into Titan Core as the world thought they knew her, but walk out as the woman she truly was. The storm wasn't coming. She was the storm. Friday arrived with the sharpness of a blade. Amelia woke before dawn, her mind clear, her resolve iron. She dressed in the charcoal suit, the silk blouse, the shoes her father bought her when he told her she was destined to lead. She studied her reflection, not as the quiet wife Dylan dismissed, but as the woman her father had raised. Calm, elegant, powerful. When she walked downstairs, Toby and Kayla sat at the kitchen table, dressed and waiting. They looked at her with wide eyes. "Mommy, you look like a superhero," Kayla whispered. Amelia smiled and pulled her daughter close. "I'm on your side, always." Toby nodded, his expression fierce. "Get him." "Mom!" She kissed both their foreheads, then left them in her mother's care. As she drove toward Titan Core, city traffic blurred past her, but her focus never wavered. Today would rewrite destinies. At Titan Core headquarters, everything was electric. Murmurs in the halls, hushed whispers around corners. Dylan had clearly been making noise, positioning himself, bragging, promising. His arrogance had seeped into the building like fog. In the elevator, Amelia stood with Richard Monroe and CFO Lillian Grant. Both wore the tight expressions of people anticipating an explosion. "Are you ready?" Richard asked. "I was born for this," Amelia replied. As the elevator doors opened onto the top executive floor, a wave of voices crashed over them. The entire boardroom area buzzed with tension. Assistants rushed back and forth. Department heads loitered near the glass walls, whispering about last-minute agenda changes. Dylan stood near the double doors of the boardroom, Sabrina on his arm, her lipstick overly bright, her smile shaky with pretense. Dylan's face gleamed with confidence, the kind of misguided certainty that comes before the fall. When he saw Amelia, he smirked. "Wow," he said, "you dressed up, trying to make a statement?" She didn't break stride. "No, just attending a meeting." He stepped in front of her, blocking her path with an outstretched arm. "You shouldn't embarrass yourself in there," he said. "This meeting is for executives." Richard stepped forward, steel in his tone. "Mr. Reeves, remove your hand." Dylan blinked, confused. "Excuse me? I'm next in line for Deputy Managing Director. She's a teacher. She doesn't belong in this room." Sabrina giggled nervously. "Dylan, maybe let her—" "Quiet," he snapped. But then a new voice cut through the tension. "She belongs here more than anyone, Mr. Reeves." Lillian Grant stepped forward and handed Amelia a leather-bound portfolio, the same one her father used. Dylan frowned. "What's going on?" Amelia met his eyes calmly. "You'll find out soon," he scoffed. "Don't tell me you're here to fight for our marriage." Sabrina's face twitched. Amelia's reply was a quiet blade. "No, Dylan. I'm here to fight for the truth." The doors to the boardroom opened. Inside, the long polished table gleamed under the chandelier. Every board member stood as Amelia entered. Every single one of them. Dylan's jaw slackened. His eyes darted from Amelia, to Richard, to Lillian, to the row of executives rising to their feet. What? Why is everyone? But before he could finish, Chairman Sanders spoke. Let's begin. We have monumental announcements today. Amelia walked to the head of the table. Dylan watched, bewildered. His breath hitched, and for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Tomorrow his world would detonate. Today the fuse sparkled. The boardroom settled into a heavy, vibrating silence. The long glass walls reflected the tension like a mirror locked onto every heartbeat. Amelia stood at the head of the table, a place she had never occupied publicly, yet one that seemed to fit her as though it had been sculpted for her alone. Dylan stood near the door, frozen. Sabrina clutched his arm, unsure whether to step forward or run. Chairman Sanders cleared his throat. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge someone whose presence today marks a critical turning point in Titan Core history. The board members nodded, eyes all fixed on Amelia. Dylan frowned. What is this? Why is she standing there like she's... Amelia turned her head slightly, her voice calm. Dylan, please sit. The words were simple, but the boardroom reacted as though lightning cracked through the ceiling. He blinked. What? Sit? Amelia, you're embarrassing yourself. Sit down, she repeated with a quiet authority that filled the room. Something in her tone made even Sabrina flinch, but Dylan remained standing. Chairman Sanders folded his hands. Mr. Reeves, for the sake of order, please take your seat. Dylan looked around, every executive staring at him. Their faces respectful, toward her, not him. Slowly, stiffly, he sat, a man unknowingly descending into his own execution. Amelia opened the portfolio Lillian had handed her. Inside were documents, signatures, legacy markers, everything Michael Carter had left behind. She placed the first page on the table. This, she said, is the Carter Trust Agreement, the document that outlines the ownership structure of Titan Core Holdings. Dylan's brow furrowed. I don't understand, she continued. My father, Michael Carter, established Titan Core with two primary goals, to advance innovation and to secure his family's future. She lifted her gaze. I am that family. A gasp rippled through the junior executives near the back. Sabrina's hand flew to her mouth. Dylan shook his head. What are you saying? Amelia laid down the second document, the one with her father's signature and the embossed seal. I own 51% of Titan Core Holdings. The room erupted. Chairs shifted. Murmurs swelled. Two board members stood in shock. Dylan's face drained of color. No, he whispered. No, that's impossible. You're a teacher. He pointed violently. You can't be the CEO of my company. Amelia's expression didn't flicker. It was never your company, she said softly. Chairman Sanders nodded. Effective immediately, the board officially recognizes Amelia Carter as the rightful chief executive officer of Titan Core Holdings. The announcement hit the room like a thunderclap. Sabrina stumbled backward, her heel catching on the carpet. Dylan slammed his palm on the table. No, you can't do this. She's lying. Richard Monroe slid a thick dossier toward him. You should read this. It documents your unauthorized spending, your coercive behavior toward subordinates, and your attempt to restructure the company to fire Amelia Carter, without knowing she was the majority owner. Every eye drilled into Dylan. His hands shook as he opened the folder. Page after page confirmed everything he had done. Every expense, every gift to Sabrina, every attempt to sabotage his own wife. And then he saw the last page. Termination recommendation. Dylan Reeves, prepared by Executive Oversight Committee for ethical and operational misconduct. Dylan's mouth went dry. You're firing me? Amelia stepped closer, her eyes steady. You fired yourself. Sabrina dropped his arm. Dylan, you told me you were running this place. Dylan looked at her helplessly. I thought I was... Amelia closed the portfolio slowly. Let me make this clear, she said. I didn't come here today to take revenge. I came to take back what was mine. The consequences you're facing, you built them, brick by brick. Dylan's voice cracked. Amelia, please. But she lifted a hand gently. This meeting isn't over. And there's one more truth you need to hear. The board leaned in. Sabrina froze. Dylan swallowed hard. And it concerns your promotion and your future. The room went silent. The storm had one last lightning strike left. The boardroom throbbed with tension so thick it became a second air. The executives leaned forward. Sabrina clutched her purse with trembling fingers. Dylan sat hunched, sweat beading on his forehead. The dossier of his own downfall lying open like a confession he never meant to write. Amelia stood tall at the head of the table. The true heir, the silent storm now unleashed. "There is one final matter," she said, her voice calm, controlled, lethal. "It concerns your promotion and your future within Titan Corps." Dylan swallowed hard. "Amelia, please. I made mistakes. But this is too far. You can't just—" She cut him off gently. "This isn't my decision. It's the company's." Chairman Sanders cleared his throat. "Mr. Reeves, in light of the evidence and your behavior over the past year, we are not only terminating your employment, we are also rescinding your promotion, permanently barring you from holding any executive position in any Titan Corps subsidiary." Gasps erupted. Sabrina stepped away from Dylan as if he'd burst into flames. "Dylan, you said you were going to be deputy managing director. You said you were the future of this company." Dylan's voice cracked. I didn't know. Amelia, please. You can fix this. You're the CEO now. Help me." Amelia's gaze softened for the briefest moment. This man had been her husband, the father of her children, the one who promised to protect her, but instead tried to erase her. "I would have helped you," she said quietly, "if you had ever once treated me like a partner instead of a stepping stone." Dylan blinked rapidly, eyes shining with tears. Then Amelia nodded to Richard. Richard opened the next folder. "This," he announced, "is a record of Mr. Reeves's attempt to manipulate internal votes for his promotion by offering incentives to 2 department heads." Dylan lunged forward. "That's not true. That's—" Lillian cut him off. "We have video proof." His breath hitched. Sabrina covered her mouth. "Dylan, you used company gifts on me?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Amelia lifted the final document, the one she had saved for last. "This," she said, placing it in front of him, "is the restraining order Titan Corps is filing. You are not allowed on any Titan Corps property, nor are you permitted to contact any Titan Corps employee. Violations will result in immediate legal action." The room went still. Dylan's voice came out as a whisper. Is this really happening?" Amelia met his eyes. "This is the truth, Dylan. A truth you created." He stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. "Fine! You can have your stupid company. You can keep your stupid title. But you can't keep my kids from me." Amelia didn't flinch. "You left them long before today." His rage faltered. His knees buckled. He sank into the empty chair behind him, a man watching his entire life collapse like a sandcastle in a rising tide. Sabrina stepped away, clutching her purse. "I can't do this. I didn't sign up for this." And she left him, heels clicking a cold farewell. Amelia closed the meeting. Then she turned to Dylan one last time. "You didn't lose your job because of me," she said gently. "You lost everything because you never saw the value of what you already had." He stared at her, broken. "Amelia, is there anything left between us?" She paused in the final mercy. "Forgiveness," she said softly. "But not reunion." Security escorted him out, his shoulders shaking. As the doors closed, Chairman Sanders said, "Welcome, CEO Carter." Amelia inhaled deeply, the moment her father always knew would come. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds as if bowing to her rise. She was no longer the quiet wife. She was the CEO, the heir, the storm, and this was only the beginning of her legacy.